Facts consumers should know before considering credit counseling or debt consolidation. Brought to you by CreditSecretsBible.com. There's one topic which every time we write about it seems to generate some hate mail, while at the same time spawning a flurry of wonderful praise from consumers. Of course, the hate mail's always from the few people that happen to own these certain types of businesses we discussed, credit counseling or debt consolidation companies. Many even claim to be nonprofit organizations. You'd almost have to be an ostrich with your head stuck in the sand not to see or hear at least one advertisement a day from a credit counseling or debt consolidation company. However, you can expect this to change, and change soon. Since this is a topic which tends to stir up the owners of these businesses, we're going to take a different approach by not sharing our opinion, but rather the opinion of others. We'll start with the news media and the Internal Revenue Service. NPR News, May 15, 2006. Quote, the Internal Revenue Service is revoking the tax-exempt status of some of the largest credit counseling agencies in the country. An IRS investigation disclosed that the firm solicited business from people seriously in debt and that they didn't provide counseling or consumer education as required. Prodded in part by a Congressional Oversight Committee and consumer advocates, the IRS began investigating dozens of credit counseling agencies, most holding nonprofit status 2 years ago. IRS Commissioner Mark Everson said the companies, quote, poisoned an entire sector of the charitable community, unquote. Everson said in many instances, companies were organized merely to funnel business to loosely affiliated for-profit companies. Many of the firms spend millions of dollars on commercials that urge anyone with debt to call them to solve their financial woes. And because tax-exempt organizations are not bound by the federal Do Not Call list, the firms were able to randomly call consumers, pitching their services under the guise of a nonprofit counseling service. The IRS investigations are also likely to affect consumers, thanks to a new bankruptcy law that requires consumers considering bankruptcy to get counseling before they're allowed to file. The IRS wants to ensure that only legitimate nonprofit agencies are doing the counseling. In addition to the actions announced Monday, the IRS is sending more than 700 compliance letters to the rest of the credit counseling industry, unquote. That NPR story was broadcast in May 2006. Since almost all credit counseling and debt consolidation companies claim a nonprofit status, we feel most consumers are easily sucked in with their skepticism and defenses at bay. After all, when most of us hear the word nonprofit, the first thing we usually think of is, well, a church or homeless shelter. From the NPR article and the actions of the IRS, we think it's fair to assume that many of these, quote, nonprofit organizations have been operating under a scenario similar to that of a wolf guarding a henhouse. However, this doesn't mean all credit counseling and debt consolidation companies are bad, but you do need to know the truth about how they operate and their limitations. The first thing you want to understand is these companies are all more interested in making money off of you than they are in preserving your credit rating. The bottom line with either credit counseling or debt consolidation is that it absolutely ruins your credit. We can just hear the companies arguing this with the consumer right now, telling them nonsense like, it helps your credit since it tells creditors that you're working on your situation and not just running away from it. Listen. If one of these places tells you that, then watch out. Why? Because they will lie to you about other things as well. One of the first actions these programs usually require is for you to close all your revolving credit accounts. You then make payments to the organization, and they take care of everything for you. What this says to your creditors, as well as anyone else considering giving you credit, is that you are so out of control with your finances that you can't even manage paying back on your own. Therefore, you're hiring someone else to do it for you. 99% of the time, these companies will claim they can negotiate with your creditors and get interest rates reduced, thereby saving you money. While this is true, what's also true is you can easily negotiate these same rates as well as they can just by calling your creditors yourself. You'd be amazed at how many of your creditors would love to hear from you, especially when the chips are down. Not to mention, any money the counseling company was to save you would be more likely sucked back up by their monthly fees, usually about $500 to $1,000 per year. This brings us into a whole other dynamic of their business model. Because these companies always make their money off of monthly fees paid by the consumer, the longer they can keep those monthly fees coming in, the more profitable their business will be. It's for this reason that most consumers who sign up with these companies usually find themselves on payment plans with the lowest monthly payment possible, which also turns out to be the longest payment plan possible. Not surprising, is it? Are we against credit counseling and debt consolidation companies? Absolutely not. After all, there are millions of people in America who will never be able to manage their finances. Credit to them is a destructive addiction, much like alcohol or drugs, and they will never be able to control it. Instead, it will always control them. We've all seen these people. Every time they're extended credit, shortly thereafter, they're in financial trouble, usually blaming it on some external factor. For these people, we think these credit and debt counseling programs can be a good thing, as a ruined credit report is not a hindrance to them, but actually an asset. It keeps them out of future financial trouble by forcing them to live their lives on a cash and carry basis, which is ultimately conducive to a better standard of living down the road. On the other hand, if you're good with your finances and have control with credit, but went through some type of hardship beyond your control in the past, such as a divorce or maybe losing your job, then the services of these companies will never be for you. You will do far better and preserve your credit rating by taking matters into your own hands. Reason being is that you understand your credit rating is a powerful tool that can help you move ahead faster, help others, and help yourself as well create the life you want. It all comes down to self-management. We all know that those who cannot manage themselves will ultimately be managed by others, and credit's no different. When you learn to manage it well, you are the master and it is the servant. If you care about your credit and want to benefit from it in the future, then you will never rely on a credit or debt counseling service to help you get out of any trouble you find yourself in. Instead, you'll look inward and get yourself out while preserving your credit rating the best you can. Credit and debt counseling is for people who are okay with throwing their credit rating in the trash so they can have someone else manage their payments for them, since they're unable to manage themselves. And again, as far as negotiating interest rates, you can do just as good as them or better. If you don't believe me, just call any of your creditors and straight out tell them your situation. You'll quickly find out you don't need to be afraid of them. They just want to get paid like the rest of us. This video has been brought to you by CreditSecretsBible.com, the fastest way to raise your credit score, guaranteed. For more information, please visit CreditSecretsBible.com.